Well, just a few things, one or two things. I don't have too many things to address. The first one is that recently I will be offering a medication to the monastics who don't have good health. This is something I bought, not anything else. And something I bought because this medication was made back in my hometown, and to make offerings to the Sangha with medication is a meritorious deed. On one hand, it is to consider myself, and on the other is to consider that the monastic's health is really important. The medication is something that you can put it into the hot foot bath, to pour it into the hot foot bath, and then it would enhance your health. It's been made with very strict recipe, and this is something that I would like to offer to the Sangha. I probably don't have enough for too many people. Last few days, I've offered that to some of the management members of Jomos and Lamas, including the finance department, the security department, and teaching department offices, and all of those. Because I know being in those kinds of management roles are quite stressful, so I would make offerings to them. And then I've made offerings to the lamas, the lay practitioners, the jomos. Ponsoko Rinpoche usually said that there are 4 groups of retinues over here, 4 great academies and 4 great retinues. And then last few days, I've asked them how they're doing with the medicine, and I was told that they shared it with the fellow staff members instead. Initially, my intention was to share it with only the management team because they worked very hard, but they've shared it with the fellow Sangha members. Not so sure if everybody had it, and it's not something that cost a lot. And if you were to generate any aggression because you didn't receive it, I don't think it's necessary. The second thing is that I recently got my book, The Footprints on the Journey. This is a French version. It looks very similar to the English version. And another one is called The Light of Larungar. The French version of the Footprints on the Journey is translated by Yuan Ying, and this book is translated by Kamo Yuanhao and Catherine. There's the Song of Victory, as well as the magnetizing supplication, the magnetizing cloud, the Wangdu, and Catherine translated some teachings on releasing life.
讲那个也是讲什么，就是大乘宝王经啊，先年那个传承。Dirtirti ujibar number 0 dirti thugbi warfa kongwa na ser dang ngar kir jijig yoda de re re yang par da hotsa da zhig zhi yoda re re yang yang se mo se di genba ge zhi yoda ngu dagla no shang zhi san hua zang shang zhi san hua dang bo shang zhi sim dang bo kiet ba da ne so ri ger bo de da na zhi za xie wa gyab chog dong zhi da ma ne de da yang warfa kongwa de da na yang da de gen ma cha Sirnin Gija Jabran Zandonder, Jabal number 0, the Tuba Warpo Kong, the Dona German, the Kong Gaston, or Matuk Yonso, Gamba, and Gibetana, Duba number not so, Matuk Simo, Gaston, Gamba, Toyo, Dejan Sama, 대덕 자르메 바 자르메 강 대덕 알았소니 추지 감시도 되나 자르메 강네 중가 더더그 저서 안조르데 저자리리 장 장오든 저자든 요바 라라는 양로 자당 담배 용서 강어 라라는 메토가 용서 강테 메토 어발라당 밤마당 금다당 번다르가당 번다르가당 번자 번다르가당 지진바당 만다라바당 만다라바 침보도 용서 강어 적사대등의 상황은 유도공 동보대도 마로는 로마노세당을 lep시비 해전집전바 조번당을 나차당 처음이 침보랍던 정화 세모도당 세모도 주바랍도 연바봉 랍던 정화 자연 전만나바나 조던 정화 안착사 대나나 장주상화 대도는 문자상 탑바침부 주나 속지지서 잠버시냥랜데 비지서 잠버시 고리 등을 끝내 셈버시도 삼내 챤발라 구마트 저번남버세르와 테타비 바르 공원 대동 텐자유상 주상화 더요데 데라와네 도지고지샤와 바르 공원 대동 남먹음 질자동 네 뱀 거견다 나차담 정화담 연나조바담 치 식바신도 상하도 대도는 상제당 추당 겐든 람곰브르다바당 추라선 스틱브르시바당 샴발랑니 브르시바당 조바곰브르시바당 냥랜다르 셈브르시바당 마교 교브르시바당 리티베 텐자비 마금 곰브르가와당 소니 와르 공원대당 나요 리지 아로 정도마요 대가지노 도르지고 가지노 응르지고 가지노 세르지고 가지노 실기고 가직나 메토당 메토당 밤마말 보고 가직나 름보치 안잔레고 가직나 름보치 납든지고 가직나 와르비 공부대덕남 참마된 자가 딱 너무 르기버 바로 공부대덕나요 샤공숨 담마당 시리 상당 잔든지 상당 고지 상당 잠업죠 도마다가 당알해 잘메다 강동 시당 응르당 신도 상아요 도공화당 된자가 잘메 강대도 정성대 잘메 강대도 뭐감치 남가로소 마로소네 jansem지 땀시 된들다데 준비 바로도 준비로 땀시도 트름지 바로도 준비 땀시 조비 바로도 준비 땀시 쫀지기 바로도 준비 땀시 상든지 바로도 준비 땀시 셰럽기 바로도 준비 땀시 때때터 바로도 준비 쭉 땀시 네닥 척서는 척때 척사카지그나 세지르고 척사카지그나 응르지르고 척사 대덕 코라 코리그나 호슴지 성을 동보나 마로 로마녹세당을 시바지 리견 랍덤 청와 조번 나차담 청위 천보랍덤 청와 본진 랍덤 청와 건도 랍덤 청와 세모도 당 세모도 치더랍도 청와 럼보치 세모도 랍덤 청와 대덕 요된 적사 대덕나 상호슴 대덕 강바 썩마르다번 되게 척사 대덕나 먹음치 더건 척고 척비천나온 코라 조바대지서 셈데 제마 등어로 제와 등어로 제마 등어로 고르바대영 등어로 제마 등어로 도점자와 떡동 차라다 문도도 점맘자와 떡동 차바테는 신도 맙자버 등어로 특나보다버 제바당 고도버 제버당 하하지 셈베 셈정 여러 침버 제바당 매 잠라 제바당 도제 르라 제바당 여덕지 종치르도 제비 셈진 대덕는 신도 등어로 지데터 먹음지 대덕 리라 셈소 섬네 점냥 렌다비 상라 양라 셈데 셈지버 르기버 대타바 먹음지 추라 몸버가 더랍도 장주상화 전부 마바샤네서 원부 망거지스 담버시데 디체나 대덕라 요시 탐지 힘거시도 르기버 대타베나 샹주상화 상화 전부 샤레즈기 원보나 고노 셈지 대당 파당 마르케라고 셈진 담질라 만직 비준 밥시에도 셈진 담질라 람 동브르시에도 셈진 담질 라기 시행년된 결과때 르기 샹주상화 상화 전부 파바샤레즈 원보나 파바샤레즈 원보나 때타고 디만즘바양 콘테테다가 이게 죽바르거디 망거지서 짠나디 제 와르 콩오 때덕더 제고 라른 코라 망고로 와르 콩네 와르 콩이 어런 조고 와르 콩오 때덕나야 년렌데비 산소리 와던 여로 되네 좀던데 이르바 넘버 서베 더거더 소르데 좀던데 이게 집에 링을 자르르 겨 좀던데 집과 자르바 리기와 이게 집에 링을 제모노 대정서바 양마 암켄나 장주상 왔다 좀 되네 좀던데 이르바 넘버 서베 알란더케지 주바 넘버 0 더케지 소르도 좀던데 대정서바 좀 봐. 양도 버도 버산디 Ganga Mamkin Tama, Katsara, Rikiva, Ike, Berrington of Shantu Sawa Sawa, Chemo, Papa Shanzuki, Umbo Zuki, Nyambo, Tambago, Kando, Nyambo, Tamba, Jibana, Tarashi, so in a Jondan. Jabber number survey, and Durkichi, sort of Jondan, the same Chananga, Ike, Berringham. Chan Saravara, Mamchi, some Jondan, the Jukar Sarva, Rikiva, Ike, Berringham, Chembona, Sigam answered the Donor Namjor, the Hoto, maybe sure, Kavago, the Jansabi, Mamkin, Najan to San Juan, Gero Artacher, Mo, Rikiva, Ike, Berringham, Don, sure, the Jansaba, Tamchi, Yankara, Chuchik Tak, the Kunda, Sirna, Jansu San Hor, Kirve, Stacher, Mo, so on, Donna, Jansu San Wachimbo, Sherry, Wambu, Nyambo, Tamba. Nyambo Tamba Go, Drove, Kernayang, Cordon Cambayan, Sikan, Ike Tripper, Chembonda, Sikan, Meshiso, Kanya, Ike Tripper, Chemonda, Tawdon, Zumben, Zumbe, Samjante, Don of Sonum, Dambayano, Tetale, Dubrishi, San Gip, Jumden, de Congongo Shimani, the Gupchers are Gupchers are written, Johnson of Mebam Yamba, Dr. Yoro, Paro de Shimba. Going Joro, Zhang, Li, some Jersa, Niji, Levet of Yanda and Joro, Yerbachimbo Jibota, Jam, Chu, Juton and Jerdo, Li, Yerbo Jamsun Chawadon, Li, Yerbo, Matrobadan, Li, Yerbon Jobola, so the Flopsia, Trotu Jarton of the Mayons, Chong Shed, or Zhang, save Leon Motion Town of like a member of Chong Shed, or give it to Waru Kong Radian Sabasheva, the Jews or Gini, give Kyun Dravi, Jinji Noriba, Shatober and Jereva, Kyuji, Giri, then get the Tober Shiba, Luxo Giro, so Rikiva, Kyuji, Tartona, Chochakanebate, Tamchi, Shantus and Sherman Tober and Jete, Luxo Jisha, Jim, Ramzado, Ike Bearing Chambon, the Lala Jik, Lilan Chana Rikiva, then Lir Dorjis, Dorjis and Gero, Rancher Jim, short and the River of Shao, Tejan of Ike, Shiver, River of Shao. Rikiva, Gamma Rikiva, Molala Ziki, Trooper, Chembondo, Dubra, Shed Natin, Puba Mazaprangero, Yishiki Pomber number Topper and Gero, Shamba Chemboda, Chemboda, number and Gero. They the Yamari Jan, Paro to Shimba Youngsters, Topper and Gero, they didn't call you Corlo, Gero, Wombo, Topper and Gero, Lala Zigla, Lala Zona, Lala Zu, Wishim Joadon, London Jibber Shed Nayam, Shamba Dojan, Jirdan Jan, they the Samson Tamchans to some Shermer Dobra and Euro, Laname Bayon Dobra Chance of them near the members of the Sun, Euro and Euro, Lalazik, Rugbejan, Rubber Shedna, Labejan Rubber Shedna, Lalazik, Labejan Rubber Shedna, the Tamchans to some. Tripa Tamar and Jero and me, down Kiba, down Chiga, down Motokum Tonga, some down Rugget, down Shia, down Valang, down Womola Sopeto and Tona Teto Tamchans to some Tripa Tamar and Jero, Chia, down Gava, down Nava, down Chiva, down Zava, down Travel, don't remember Jero. Namjur Samji Majibadan, Dambrangero, Tertari, Ring of Chambon, Dubrushed, Narcuroshed, the Ene Jondan de Japan number survey, Jondan de la Japan number survey, and Durkut of sort of Jondan de Ige Ring of Chambon. Namjur Samji Majibadan, Southampton of the Mamchi, Zergi, number of Yetna. Lana me payan to perzobo shanchib damnyan len davar tomber giba taran jigbere ge ba yon chu jim zo de yon se kamra giban kurur sa nem jember ge da ba roar ngar kember giba semchan nyara da nyumon bar nabren jember giba shorsung stierne so to bar nam yon jor ge ba chu jirom nyor ge ba Tamchudum Kimba Yiki Yishia Bab Samzer Duk Chirter Tober of Gub Jondan de Gan Dala Yiki Chibur Sura den Zaman Rumbo Chirnab Dengi Yonsub Gan Te Wurver and Tarlo Jondan de Garte Zhizhou Gatang Nika Mamchi Na Duk Chagler Natsu Kibadan Pobashi de Chokrship Jid Ribab Jom de Nikr Kit Nikr Kit Jang Jondan de Duk Jondan de Lila Cuba Mamchi de Dona Pamadan, yang lamar yang joro tene jomden de giba number serwalandir ke jikastar do rigiwa yike jiba rngong da no shirjan jikten gi kor kamar dur charab nyam ben jikten gi kamz songa jande de jong soba jia chok chu ja tong chok da mala ten nyem ger shibi jong e de jong soba de do ma tu na de ni di ze de jong soba jab jom ba yang do bur zo ba san ji rig ba dang kamar dam ba de ro soba jikten kim ber che ndra kalo jero la na me ba ladang mar nam jir tom ba san jib jong den de mar bum chok jib sha ba di kyan ngir ngim chima shongwa da de ze de jong soba jab jom ba yang do bur zo ba san ji rig ji wi de ter nyang je tar chima mam jin bar chima mam jin bar rig ji wo de ro so ba jab jom ba yang do bur zo ba san ji pap ma tam ba jib sha bar jig den so jang ji ba yige chig bi ring ji jar bo ring chim mon dom chen jang song la ji kap zar ne rig ji de jong so ba padma tam bi chong de song de jang so ba padma tam bi chong san ji ji jang kala wa de re song de chong den de ji ja lam go shom Shingar Tarmo Jarne Chondun de Ige Trigbo, Ring Chimbon, the Mangar Jesus Tamba Gibir, Batam Jim John, Jura Janzu Zawa neighbor, Hka Tobran Jerava, Tobam Sar Lo, Deer Latov, Jitan Dikam Yomba Chan, Chan Marichurna de, Deram Chi Yang, Don Mamchi Bento, Saks Jera Do, Deni, Dejan Serba, Chok, Dejan Serba, Badman Chok, Ige Trigbo, Ring Chimbon, Donya, the Yondan, Bason. Songwa rigji wo ndarte khwerna ngar dar charabji chatnab zoni ge rig rngji yige jig ba chemo gam lang chi do be sonam ji phongbo chatnab jong mani so rigji wo jamsu chimbo chong nam shima ri yong jong ni ge rigji wo yige jig ba rng chemo da lang chi do be sonam ji phongbo na jong mani so rigji wo ndarte khwerna stiewa lala ji ge chim ho chad ya tham bar she de hong de ho chad ngab jer she de Jim Jave Yonsa Kamar Shipaten Kap Zamji Kara Yang Melati Gurchebi Murga Munch Vaji Jafte, Karva Yandi, Jim Jave, Chikshir, Gender Namjanti, Kim Germanda, Arje Yancho, Zachang Mebranger give Iketrick Berger Chimbo Lang, Chidobo Sonum Gipumbon, John Money so.传承以后，严谨度，这种怎么觉得有种？好，今天我们继续。没有念是吧？两节节目做的那么种种的我们全部那个叫的包括到那个咱们都是嘛，东巴推荐讲了，给小我们查了，那前我在那人公司，叫我推荐上了也了。这边彭总长老说了的，我讲就多半跑了，新界路无上山上。
The answer past profound and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in billions of aeons. I now see it, hear it, receive and uphold it, vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. To liberate all beings, let's generate the supreme bodhicitta. Let us continue with our class on the Sutra of the Baskets display. Currently, we're studying about the stories of Avalokiteshvara's activity of liberating sentient beings in various worlds. Previously, we had already talked about how Avalokiteshvara traveled to the Hell realm to liberate beings there, and then to the Pretas worlds, the Pretas cities, and then the other worlds. The other worlds including the Asura's kingdom. The story that we studied last class, I think after class today, some of you would be able to repeat that story without looking at the books, so that you can recite the story and tell that story to the rest of the Sangha. Some of you can tell the story, and then the rest of you can listen to the story. In our last class, we talked about how Avalokiteshvara went to the kingdom of Asuras, and then he saw that Asuras were imprisoned, almost like being imprisoned in a dungeon-like cave. And then Avalokiteshvara started to tell them about the merits of making offering to the world-honored one. And then the King Bali felt quite regretted. He started to tell the stories of how he made offerings to the impure recipient. At first, he made offerings to a rather short Brahmin, a dwarf, who may be his teacher, because he had a teacher named Shukra, and maybe because of that reason he experienced great suffering. And then later, he prepared to make the human sacrifices of the kings and all of those people that he imprisoned, the kings of the follow smaller kingdoms. That was when Narayana came and used various kinds of manifestations and tried to help the princes and the kings from the fellow smaller kingdoms. He managed to accumulate all the material offerings, but did not succeed in making those offerings. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been imprisoned in this lifetime. After he told the stories of his past life, Avalokiteshvara then was praised by him, and then Avalokiteshvara bestowed a prediction, also give him teachings on how to practice upon impermanence, as well as one should practice upon the pure and virtuous deeds, without which one would be falling into the hell realms and the lower realms for infinite numbers of years. And then, since the human life is very limited, one should try one's best to practice virtue. The key focus of this story was on how we should make offerings to the supreme recipient, the worthy merit field, such as the Buddha or the three jewels or the supreme Acharya. If one could do that, then the merit would be really great. Even if you were to make offering of one bite of the meal, then the merit would be infinite, would be immeasurable. And then, on the contrary, if we were to make offering to impure merit field, if we were to make all the great offerings of gold, silver, jewels, elephants, and so on and so forth, the suffering results would last for a long period of time as well. But I think as Ashura, he was reborn as an Ashura was because he made offerings, because Ashuras are still considered as one of the higher realms compared to the lower realms such as the hell realm and the hungry ghost realm and the animal realm. So Ashuras are still part of their branching from the celestial beings. So that was probably also because he made offerings to the others, so he didn't fall into the lower realms. But at the time of being reborn in higher realms, he was born as Ashura, suffering from the kinds of karmic affiliations such as engaging in warfare and having all kinds of negative afflictions and so on. I am quite looking forward to some of our fellow Sangha members to reiterate this story after class, because I think maybe because of your familiarity with watching movies, and you're very good at giving this picturestic view and giving this quite vivid storytelling, so that you would be able to tell it more clearly. Anyhow, previously we've finished this story, and now let's look at today's story. The Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara then told the great king, saying that I must leave. For today, many are gathering in the Jetavana monastery. The Jetavana monastery is where the Bhagavat Vishvabhu stays. His monastery or his grove is called also the Jetavana Grove or Jetavana Monastery. It's very similar to the Jetavana Grove of the Buddha. Avalokiteshvara over here told the Ashura king, saying that, well, I'm going there to give Dharma teachings because the Dharma teachings that I ought to give you have already finished. So I will be going to this large Dharma assembly. And then from within, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara radiated many lights, the blue, yellow, red, white, crystal, and the silver light. In the Tibetan language, the translation is silver light, and the Chinese translation is golden light. Whichever one it is, they're all of precious metals. The different kinds of light that radiated out from Avalokiteshvara, sometimes we also see different lights whenever we see rainbows and different kinds of lights. People nowadays really like to look at look into the space and try to see those rainbows and lights. Sometimes it is definitely a sign of the blessings of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. They would manifest within the space, and that kinds of blessings and that kinds of signs are indeed quite rare. This light at the time Avalokiteshvara radiated out reached the Tathagata Vishvabhu, and before whom there were Devas, Nagas, Yakshas, Mahoragas, and humans. At that time, the Tathagata Vishvabhu just finished giving Dharma teachings. Within his assembly of bodhisattvas, the bodhisattva named Gaganaganja arose from his seat. Previously, we heard the names of Sarvanivarana Vishkambin, one of the 8 great bodhisattvas. So we can see that the 8 bodhisattvas would listen to the Dharma teachings in front of the Tathagatas everywhere. Look at Avalokiteshvara and Sarvanivarana Vishkambin, as well as Gaganaganya. They would always stay in front of the Buddhas. So sometimes when we hear the stories of Bodhisattva Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara, they're indeed quite great, especially Avalokiteshvara used his wisdom eyes to make observation of the poor sentient beings everywhere. Wherever there are beings suffering, he would go there voluntarily to liberate those sentient beings. So over here, Avalokiteshvara purposely went to specifically went to see the Tathagata Vishvabhu. At the time, the bodhisattva named Gaganaganya arose from his seat, bared one shoulder and kneeling on his right knee and facing Bhagavata Vishvabhu, placing his palms together and addressed these words to him, saying that, Bhagavat, where did this light rays come from? And then Bhagavata Vishvabhu said that, noble son, the light rays came from Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, who is in the palace of Bali, the lord of Asuras. The light of Avalokiteshvara can be quite penetrating, as you can see that it goes all the way to the Pure Land of Vishvabhu, the Tathagata Vishvabhu. Unlike Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, the various countries in our world would send all kinds of missiles and guided missiles. They would engage in all kinds of explorations into what kinds of submarines and what kinds of missiles that would be guided into how many miles and so on and so forth. The poor beings in the Saha world. Nowadays, they have the targeted and guided missiles that are quite accurate. The lights of Avalokiteshvara targeted to be sent to the Dharma assembly of the Tathagata Vishvabhu. And then Bodhisattva Gaganganja then asked Bhagavata Vishvabhu, is there a way for me to see Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara? The other day, we heard that Savarnivarana Vishkambin also wanted to see Avalokiteshvara, and now the Bodhisattva Gaganaganja also wanted to see Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva as well. So we can see that the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara must be quite famous, very well known. In front of the Buddha, the Bodhisattvas are not jealous of each other. Unlike the mundane beings nowadays, though we are all disciples of Shakyamuni Buddha, if one person's activity is more vast than the other, then the other one may not even want to revere the one who had more successful activity in benefiting sentient beings. But the Bodhisattvas, they would praise and revere and respect and support each other instead of being jealous. Now, we have already received empowerments and Dharma teachings from the same guru, from the same teacher, so we are considered as the Vajra Sanghas. Between now till we attain full fruition of the Bodhi, we should always accompany each other, we should always praise each other. This is quite necessary. If we were to be jealous to each other, and if we were to feel arrogant about our contribution, feel that we are the best disciple of the teacher, this is really not the kind of activity of a Buddhist. Look at Bodhisattva. Look at Bodhisattva Savarnivarana Vishkambin and the other Bodhisattvas, how they revered Avalokiteshvara, and how Kshitigarbha Bodhisattva also revered Avalokiteshvara. Then we should be able to see that they set great examples for us. The Bhagavata now answered as a noble son, he is coming here. But Avalokiteshvara must be really busy for this few days, because he would go to the hell realm and then to liberate beings in the prodigal city and then later to the Ashura's place. He has a very busy agenda. The disciple says that Avalokiteshvara has a busy schedule just like you. You mean, did you mean that I also went to hell realm? But I have no light. I have to hide my light a bit, otherwise it's too bright. What to do if I were to really radiate light? After the Bodhisattva Gaganaganja asked Bhagavata Vishvabu, saying that, is there a way for me to see Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Avalokiteshvara? And then Bhagavata Vishvabu answered, saying that, oh, yes, he's coming. You will definitely be able to see him. When Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Avalokiteshvara left the palace of Bali, he manifested some miraculous powers. What are the miraculous powers? At the time of him parting to the Jadavana monastery, the various kinds of flowering trees and the beautiful wish-fulfilling trees appeared there. They were hung with hundreds of thousands of ornaments, with many hundreds of thousands of strings of pearls, with silk, with monastic robes, and with the clutters of garlands, and their trunks were red, and their leaves were made of gold and silver. There were also many trees made of coral, many blossom-covered trees, and pools that were completely filled with flowers. So there are beautiful corals. As well as beautiful blossom-covered trees, pools that were completely filled with flowers, so on and so forth. All of those beautiful trees and flowers and jewels that adorned the whole world. All kinds of adornments. And then the Bodhisattva Gaganaganja then asked Bhagavata Vishvabu, saying that Bhagavat, is the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara not coming? Why is he still not here? Look at this whole beautiful manifestation over here, but I don't seek for the trees and flowers. I just really want to see Avalokiteshvara. And then Bhagavat Vishvabu then answered, noble son, Avalokiteshvara has left the palace of Bali, the lord of Asuras. Initially, he was going to come here. However, his itinerary changed. After he left the palace of Bali, he then went to an extremely dreadful land. That land is named as Tamondakara, this extremely dark place. I noticed that Toku Longdo also went to quite a number of the Tibetan monasteries during summer. He would stay here and then goes to a different place later. We should study from all of these great masters. Whenever we have the opportunity to liberate sentient beings, we need to seize those opportunities and try our best without grasping onto our physical body. Whenever we have the opportunities to benefit sentient beings, we should serve with our best to go to different places. That would be the best. And then Avalokiteshvara went to this dark world that do not have any human beings located or live there. The Bhagavata continued to say that there, noble son, the sun and moon do not shine. A wish-fulfilling jewel named Varada provides light in that place. Many hundreds of thousands of yakshas and rakshasas live in that continent. This is a world of yakshas and rakshasas. We see that Avalokiteshvara would go to hell realm and hungry ghost realm and Asuras places, and now he's in the yakshas and rakshasas world. He roams about in the 6 realms, and he would choose those places to specifically benefit sentient beings. Avalokiteshvara at the time went to those places At the time, the yakshas and rakshasas were really happy. They had great joy in their hearts, and then they run to Avalokiteshvara when he arrived. When they come to Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, they paid homage at his feet and asked, "You're not tired?" They would ask that Mahasattva, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, "Oh, are you tired? It must be very tiring for you. Are you exhausted? Did you come here by foot? Because that would be very long. That would be a very long way for you to arrive here. But you have miraculous powers, so I think you're not tired and you're not exhausted. It has been a long time since you were here in Tamodakara." Avalokiteshvara must have been into Tamodakara in the past. This part of the story, the previous part, and here is told by the Bhagavat Vishvabu. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara over here says that I'm here to ripen the minds of the sentient beings, to benefit the sentient beings. Wherever he would go, he would say that I am here to liberate numerous sentient beings or limitless sentient beings. Sometimes I'm here to benefit the sentient beings. Whenever we have the opportunities to also travel around to benefit sentient beings, we need to make sure that is our intention as well. We're not traveling around, we're not to have business, we're not going around to look after ourselves. Now that we don't have the permissions to travel around too much because of the overall atmosphere, but if you were to truly generate the kinds of compassion like the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, then you could travel around and give simple teachings. And that should be our motive to travel around, to benefit sentient beings, that is. At that time, then the yakshas and the rakshasas all appeared or all came to Avalokiteshvara. At that time, the yakshas and rakshasas led him to a lion throne of divine gold and jewels, upon which he sits. Seated, he teaches the Dharma to the yakshas and rakshasas. This sutra's name is called the Sutra of Baskets Display. Some people may think that, well, this is a story that's taught by Shakyamuni Buddha. So this sutra, the Sutra of Baskets Display, must be before Shakyamuni Buddha. Well, this will be expounded later in this sutra as well, because in the tantras, including the Lotus Sutra, some of the sutras, in fact, already were present before Shakyamuni Buddha. There were numerous Buddhas before Shakyamuni Buddha had already expounded on the sutra. It is only that Shakyamuni Buddha stated the sutra, taught on the sutra again. So Avalokiteshvara then also give the teaching of the sutra as well, and saying that I'm going to give you this teaching of the Sutra of Baskets Display, and I will talk about the merits associated with the sutra. If you were to listen to only 4 verses, 4 shlokas of the Baskets Display, and if you were to uphold it and recite it and chant recite it, and if you can understand it or to expound it to the others or contemplate upon it, you would be able to receive the immeasurable merits of it. In our time, we probably won't be able to be like Avalokiteshvara to give teachings to the Rakshas and Yakshasas in the Yakshas and Rakshasas kingdom, but I think we would definitely be able to give teachings to some people. This particular teaching had already been translated by the great masters of the past, and we have this teaching present here. So even if we do not have the ability to request the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara to give us teachings, but we can at least request the other great teachers to give teachings on the Sutra of the Basket's display. Just think about the history of the Sutra of Basket's display. According to the Tibetan tradition, it already was translated back in the 5th or 6th century. It was at least 1,000 years ago. And then it was translated into Chinese language a long time ago, and it was memorized by great panditas. The panditas would memorize them. In the past, memorization is the key method of passing down teaching. If the panditas were to write everything down and can only read it out, it was to be laughed at. But for us, we can only read it but can't recite. I think there is a potential problem associated with memorization. That is, if a pandita were to pass away without passing down the teaching, then the memorization would die with the corpse. So we need to not only memorize it, we also need to write things down so that your teachings can be passed down to later generations. When we look at the translation by Devashantika that's been translated for over 1,000 years. But how many of the mainland monasteries would practice upon this sutra or know about this sutra? This sutra carries so much great merits as well as the great compassions of the translator. But why don't we propagate it? It may have been propagated in smaller circles and to smaller groups, but never in large groups. In the recent compilation of the great master's teachings on the merits of Avalokiteshvara, I see that there are many great masters of mainland would uphold the 6 syllables mantra, the Mani mantra, but not many would uphold. In fact, none talks about this sutra. When we look at how Avalokiteshvara would propagate Dharma to Rakshas and Yakshasas so successfully, if we do not propagate it in the human realm, that would be quite regrettable. Anyhow, we have the fortune to listen to this teaching that can be considered as liberation upon hearing teaching from the Sutrayana. We should consider ourselves as extremely fortunate. Over here, the Buddha then started saying that, noble sons, it is like this. For example, I know the numbers of atoms that exist, but noble sons, I cannot calculate the accumulation of merit that comes from the precious king of Mahayana Sutras, the Sutra of Basket's display. Noble sons, it is like this. For example, I can count the drops in the vast ocean, but noble sons, I cannot calculate the accumulation of merit that comes from even one of the shlokas, the 4-line verse of the precious king of Mahayana Sutras, the Sutra of Basket's display. I truly consider that all of you who are sitting here receiving this teaching are quite fortunate. Before at least our death, we have received this teaching. We have received the sutra. As I told the Kimpo of the lay practitioners center over here just a few days ago, I told him that he should give the teaching on the sutra as soon as possible because some of our senior practitioners are already quite aged. So before their passing, we should give them teachings because life is quite impermanent. Anyhow, I think before your death, before our death comes, we listened to this teaching, we received this teaching, especially if you believe in karma, if you believe in causes and conditions and fruitions, then you should know that the merit is quite vast. And then the Buddha continued to say that, noble sons, if Tathagatas, Arhats, and Samyak Sambuddhas as numerous as the grains of sand in the 12 Ganges rivers were gathered together in one place and for 12 aeons were provided with robes, food, boughs, bedding, seeds, necessary medicine, and utensils, they would still not be able to accumulate the merit that comes from even one of the four-line verse, one shloka of the precious king of the Mahayana Sutras, the Sutra of Baskets display. So it is needless to say that I cannot do all by myself in Dhammadakara. So one shloka of the verse, the merit comes from such a shloka would far surpass of all the previously mentioned offerings. And I cannot do so all by myself in Dhammadakara. The Chinese translation is a little bit different because it has two negations. Where it states that the merits of making offerings to the Buddhas is inexhaustible, and then the merit of upholding this sutra cannot be expounded in full by myself in this Dhammadakara. But the Chinese translation is a little bit difficult to understand, especially when it comes to upholding the four verses. The Tibetan translation is that this merit of upholding the shloka cannot be expounded by me cannot be fully expounded all by myself in Dhammadakara. The sands of 12 Ganges rivers had appeared in this sutra before, and over here it also says that making offerings to the 12 Buddhas compared to the merit of upholding a shloka from this sutra, the latter merit would far surpass of the prior merit. I think maybe in this way it's easier to understand. When I read into the Chinese translation, it is a bit more difficult to understand. The Tibetan translation, the particular style is a bit different, but when it comes to the comparisons of merit, I think you can read into it and see for yourself as well, and see if you can understand it. Now, the third aspect, that was the example from the third aspect, and then the fourth example is that the Buddha continued to tell him by saying that, noble son, it is like this. For example, even if all the households in the four continents build monasteries of gold and jewels and build 1,000 stupas inside each of the monasteries, and in one day inserted relics in all of them, the accumulation of merit from one four-line verse of the precious king of the Mahayana Sutras, the Sutra of Baskets display, would be far greater than the merit from inserting the relics. Over here it points it out, even if everyone would build a monastery inside their house and being decorated and adorned with the divine gold and jewels, as well as the stupas inside those monasteries, 1,000 stupas inside of those monasteries. And then in the Tibetan translation also says that to put different kinds of relics within. But that kind of merit would still be less than chanting and making offering to a shloka from this sutra. Nowadays, we can't even build that great numbers of stupas. It's very difficult for us to build even 7 of the stupas. The Buddha stated that it is meritorious to build stupas. Also, the Buddha said that studying, upholding, reciting, and make offering, and as well as listening to the sutras would generate great merits as well. So with your own devoted mind, you should contemplate upon why we're studying this sutra before our passing from this lifetime, because we indeed want to generate a great merit. And then Avalokiteshvara continued to say that, noble sons, it is like this. For example, just as the 5 great rivers flow into the great ocean, the 5 great rivers has been described in the medium Agama Sutra as well as Mahavibhasha Shastra. So over here it says that the flow of the 5 great rivers that enters into the great ocean is immeasurable. In that same way, merit accumulates from one 4-line verse of the precious king of Mahayana Sutras. The Sutra of Baskets display would be far surpassing that of the prior. Just as how Avalokiteshvara would give teachings to the Yakshas and Rakshasas, whenever and wherever we go, we can also give the oral transmission of the mantra of Avalokiteshvara. So we can try our best to give the teachings on Avalokiteshvara to the beings with fortunate connections. Avalokiteshvara himself would travel to different places and give teachings to them, and he's rather quite busy. So we should also try our best to provide the oral transmission to the sentient beings in monasteries, in different kinds of business and enterprise, even in prisons, in different continents, such as in Africa, in Europe, in America, in India, in Nepal, in Bangladesh, and different countries. You could bring the Sutra of the Baskets display and give them teachings as well as oral transmission. You can repeat simply what Avalokiteshvara talked about and taught to the various beings from different realms, and the merit would be great. At that time, the Yakshas and Rakshasas asked Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara what kind of accumulation of merit is obtained by those beings who write out this precious king of Mahayana Sutra, the Sutra of Baskets display. And then the Avalokiteshvara then replied by saying that, noble son, their accumulation of merit is immeasurable. Those who engage in writing out a precious king of Mahayana Sutras, the Sutra of Baskets display, are engaged in writing the 84,000 compilations of Dharma. Well, when we look at the current Tripitakas, let it be the Chinese or the Tibetan, all of those Tripitakas are currently available in the human world. I'm not even talking about the ones that's included in the celestial realm or in the Nagas world, Nagas palace. I'm simply talking about the ones that's available in the human world. If you were to copy one shloka from this sutra, that merit will be equivalent to copying and writing the Tripitaka. So just a short while ago, I asked our copy room to copy and print the Sutra of Baskets display, and you have done so. So our very small and seemingly insignificant copy room had already built and copied and printed the 84,000 dharmas. That is the merit that is equivalent to copying the full Tripitaka teachings. At the time of giving teachings of the Kshitigarbha Sutra, I also asked to build some of the Kshitigarbha statues. And now it seems that after giving teachings on the Sutra of Baskets display, people would be very much willing to print the sutra as well, to contribute to the printing of the sutras. But right now we don't really have any place to store those books and the sutras. So do not just send us money and then ask us to print the sutras for you. You could do that by yourself and then distribute it to other people to generate merit as well as making connections. And they will become kings. They will become Chakravartins who rule the 4 continents. They will give birth to thousands of brave, heroic sons with perfect bodies and who defeat their adversaries. Nowadays, we see that there are countries that rely on the supplements of the supplies of the weapons from other countries to engage in warfare. Rather than relying on other countries' supply for weapons, it would be better to print the Sutra of Basket's display in such a way one would naturally defeat the adversary. When we look at the war currently that's escalating between Russia and Ukraine, it seems that both sides are extremely exhausted but still have a great aggression. The miserable sentient beings are suffering because of aggression, because of greed. Initially, in this planet, if we were to respect each other, if we were to share the resources with each other, then the resources in this planet should be sufficient to supply all the beings in this world, and we can still save for our future generation as well. However, within our very short few decades worth of human life, it seems that people out of ignorance would use all kinds of weapons to fight over the resources, which then ended up to destroy whatever resources that's available for both others and ourselves. Please stop the war. It would be best for us to chant the Avalokiteshvara's mantra and then use the prayer wheels. And then you can plant some crops and vegetables. Wouldn't that be the best? Anyway, this world indeed is in a very poor state right now. If people were to even chant the name, the title of the Mahayana Sutras and the Sutra of Basket's display, this person would be swiftly and completely liberated from the suffering of samsara and be completely liberated from birth, aging, sickness, death, misery, lamentation, suffering, unhappiness, and conflict. Not only birth, old age, sickness, and death, but all kinds of suffering can be alleviated as well. So in this dark age, we should try to read and try to try to recite the sutras like this more often. Even if you don't have other time, even if you do not have extra time, if you were to simply chant the title of this book, if you were to simply to say that Namo Sutra of Basket's display would generate a great merit as well as create great meaning to yourself as well as the world. And then in your future life, doesn't matter wherever you would take rebirth, you would be able to remember your past life as well. In every life, their bodies will have an aroma that's like a sandalwood. From their mouths, it will come out scent of blue lotus. Their bodies will be completely perfect, and then they will have immense powerful strength. Unlike some of us, whom needs probably 2 sticks to walk, and sometimes walking by ourselves are just like dancing instead of walking properly. But if you were to chant and to supplicate to this sutra, and if we were to place this sutra in our shrine hall and in our shrine and make offering and prostrate to it, if we were to simply have very small aspirations, it is very beneficial to our own health, our body. And if we were to have a greater aspiration, and those can be fulfilled as well. Now the Yakshas and Rakshasas said that in that way Avalokiteshvara taught them an appropriate dharma. Some of the Yakshas and Rakshasas attained the result of becoming a once returner. All of the Yakshas and Rakshasas, after attaining the various kinds of levels of fruition, they felt really happy. They kept on asking, saying that, would you please stay here? Do not go anywhere else. We live in this dark place and we really need you to help us and give us teachings. And sometimes whenever a teacher goes to those large cities and give teachings to the lay practitioners whom are quite burdened by their life and various kinds of afflictions. After giving them classes, maybe those lay practitioners not necessarily attain any fruition, but at least their minds would feel quite relaxed and quite at rest, at ease. And then they would ask whether the teacher would be able to stay there. But Avalokiteshvara doesn't want to stay there in any comfortable places or a luxurious residence. That's not his main objective. As a mundane being, we would feel that, oh, this Rakshasas and Yakshas are really good to me, so why don't I stay here? But Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara told them that I am here to liberate numerous sentient beings. I am going to liberate limitless sentient beings so that they can attain Bodhi, so that they can tread on the path of the Bodhi. That is why I am going to part and not going to live here. Whenever we have any opportunities in the future, if causes and conditions were to be fulfilled, then we could also give different teachings at different places, even if it were to be just a very short stanza, as such kinds of merits are quite necessary to them. And then at the time, the Yakshas and Rakshasas resting on their cheeks and hands brooded and said to each other, our Avalokiteshvara is going to leave us and we will not be able to talk about the Dharma with him. How are we going to seek for dharmas from others, and whom are we going to seek dharmas from? After you part from us, what are we going to do? How can we discuss the wonderful and the supreme dharma? Could you please live here and stay here because you've helped us greatly? They kept on asking Avalokiteshvara, but couldn't have the minds of Avalokiteshvara be changed. As the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara was leaving, the Yakshas and the Rakshasas followed him. And then Avalokiteshvara said to them, it is too far for you to come, so you should really go back. The Yakshas and Rakshasas bowed down at their feet of Bodhisattva Mahasattva and returned. And then at the time, the Yakshas and Rakshasas reached to the border of the celestial realm, and then Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara said that, oh, it's just too far for you already, so that's good enough. You should return back to wherever you were. And then the Yakshas and Rakshasas bowed, and then they returned back. Some said that it is best not to bow and not to prostrate to the teacher at the time of bid farewell. It was said that Gampopa, at the time of leaving Milarepa sent him to a bridge and asked him not to prostrate to him. But Gampopa couldn't help himself but to prostrate to the teacher. And then after that, with the causes and conditions, he never saw his teacher again. And then there was another story of Yeshi Jianchen. In his biography, it says that his teacher asked him not to prostrate before they bid farewell, so that they could save another opportunity, so that they could create the causes and conditions to meet again. But at the time of parting from the teacher, he couldn't control his faith and his emotions, and then he prostrated to the feet of the teacher, and that resulted to them not meeting again in this lifetime. I think those are some of the teachings taught in the Tibetan Buddhism. In some of the lineage stories that we've heard teachings as such. And Phuntsok Rinpoche once also mentioned that, but it is not necessarily all conditions would apply to this particular rule. Sometimes, though paid prostration, but they did see, but the disciple and the students, the disciple and the teachers would meet each other again. Anyhow, at that time, the Yakshas and Rakshasas, after prostrated to Avalokiteshvara, then they returned back. The Avalokiteshvara vanished into sky as a mass of flames. How wonderful is that? If we were to commute as Avalokiteshvara, we could vanish into flames and then commute to the celestial palaces or to the different places in the world. You don't need any passports or visas or PCR tests, and you can go wherever and whenever. Wouldn't that be great? You don't need to test twice in 3 days, which is the current requirements right now. By the way, recently it is said that all of our staff members needs to get tests, 2 tests in 3 days, or 1 test within every 2 days. The specific requirements will be announced later. There are the PCR stations in both the female and male sections. You could test it. It is not harmful to you. Mainly, they're doing it because they need to submit the numbers of tested personnel. Anyhow, whomsoever are available to get tested before the 31st, you can go as you wish, and then you would be able to get messages saying that you need to get tested, so on and so forth. And sometimes those of you who would have to go to the grocery shopping or to get your packages and so on, it might be better for you to get the PCR tests so that the numbers of tested personnel would rise up. And the current requirements from the authorities are about 30% of the total population. That's the current requirements of Garzei County. Initially, they asked to be tested every day, but we really couldn't do that because we were quite busy. So the current requirement is 1 test within 3 days or 2 tests within 3 days. But look at Avalokiteshvara. He doesn't need to do that at all. He doesn't need to be concerned with that. So he just ascended into the sky and vanished into a mass of flames, and then he would already arrive in the celestial realm. Isn't that quite wonderful? We must be quite envious of that. In order to liberate sentient beings, for those of you who already made the aspiration of Mahayana Bodhicitta, as Avalokiteshvara had already made such aspiration, we need to try our very best to spread the Dharma teachings as much as we can. If you have such aspiration and try to benefit the sentient beings, even if you don't have great wisdom, as long as you have the great aspiration, as long as you have the great actions, as long as you can be a good person, and then maybe out of all kinds of causes and conditions, your activity of benefiting sentient beings could be quite vast. Nowadays, we don't have the opportunity to spread the Dharma teachings online. Otherwise, if we were to be able to interact with the people online, I think for a period of time to ask people to chant the Mani Mantra, I think this Dharma teaching can be propagated really well. But now you have received an oral transmission, and you could also be like Avalokiteshvara. Sometimes go up, sometimes go down, sometimes go to different countries. And just like Avalokiteshvara that do not need a passport, he then arrived into celestial realm to then started benefiting sentient beings. And after ascending to celestial realm, Avalokiteshvara changed to a different identity, and he now transformed into a Brahmin and went among the devas in the Shuddhavasha realm. Among those devas, there was a deva named Shukundala, who was poor and suffering. Sometimes Avalokiteshvara, in order to liberate even one being, he then went to the celestial realm. But wherever he goes, since he has a miraculous power, he could travel to wherever he wishes to. Now, there is this deva named Shukundala, but he's a poor and suffering celestial being. So the Avalokiteshvara used this identity of being a Brahmin to tell this deva. Avalokiteshvara came to the deva in the form of a Brahmin and said to him, "I'm hungry and thirsty. Could you please give me some food and something to drink?" This deva is of great suffering, and sadly, he wept and told the Brahmin, which is Avalokiteshvara, saying that I myself am suffering from poverty. I really have nothing to give you. And then the Brahmin replied to him that I don't have great requirement. I just need a little bit. You can just give me whatever little bit you have. As long as you can make a very small connection with me, a very small auspicious connection is already good enough. I don't have such a big requirement from you. So the deva then decided to find some food. Shukundala entered his divine palace and looking inside his pots, he saw that some pots had become completely filled with priceless, precious jewels. Other pots had become completely filled with food that had supreme flavors. And the left side of the divine palace had become completely filled with the divine clothing. The divine clothing are decorated everywhere. This is his own palace. After he returned back home, his home is no longer poor and no longer full of suffering and pain. At that time, Shukundala thought to himself that without a doubt, the one at my door is an excellent recipient for offering, and he was brought to me this attainment of splendor. This Brahmin is quite extraordinary, and it is him who brought me this attainment of splendor. Shukundala then invited the Brahmin into his divine palace. After the Brahmin entered, then Shukundala offered him the divine jewels, served him the food and divine perfect flavors, and gave him the divine clothing. And then the Brahmin ate and recited a benediction. Or sometimes we can say that a dedication of auspiciousness and dedication of longevity and happiness. Maybe because Shukundala is poor and maybe suffering from certain illness, so Brahmin, the manifested form of Avalokiteshvara, made this dedication of merit personally. And then the deva, Shukundala, asked the Brahmin, saying that, "A great Brahmin, where do you come from?" He replied, "I come from the monastery named Jetavana." And then Shukundala asked him, "What is this place like?" And then the Brahmin answered, saying that it is a palace that is delightful, filled with divine jewels, and completely beautiful by divine wish-fulfilling trees. There are beautiful flowers, many kinds of bathing pools, many who have the qualities of right conduct and are worthy recipient for offerings. And there are the miracles. There are the miracles of Tathagata Vishvabu. In fact, all of the animate and inanimate world that I was describing to you is the manifestation of this Tathagata Vishvabhu. And then the Deva continued to say that, Brahman, you definitely speak the truth. So who are you? You must not be a Brahman. Who are you? What is your true identity? Because he doesn't appear to, because the Deva thinks that a Brahmin doesn't have such great power and a great teaching of the truth, and saying that, who are you? Are you a Deva or are you a human? I used to live in great poverty, but now look at the wonderful manifestation of out of merits. So you must be someone of a great merit. And then the Brahmin replied, I am not a Deva and I am not a human. I am one who has compassion for the poor and the wretched. I am one who shows them the path to enlightenment. I am a bodhisattva. The Deva, after hearing that, he was extremely delighted and then offered his diadem and earrings to the Brahmin and recited, Oh, the one who is comprised of qualities, is devoid of all evil. On this day, the seed has been planted, and on this day, the fruit has been produced. After the Deva had recited this verse, the Brahmin departed. So the Deva, after singing that, I have finally met a worthy recipient and finally parted from all the defilements in my mind stream and finally able to plant a seed in this worthy recipient and received great merit. The great Brahmin descended from the Deva realm to the island of Simhala. Simhala is probably the now Sri Lanka. Maybe a little bit more. Arriving there, he transformed himself into a handsome form and approached the Rakshasas. When they saw his handsome body, they desired him. Maybe one of the Rakshasas had a great desire for him, and then this one came to him and said that, Sir, take us young women. We have no husband. For we who have no husband, be a husband. For we who have no protector, be a protector. For we who have no support, be a support. These are your homes with food, homes with drink, and homes with clothes, and a variety of multicolored beds, beautiful gardens, and beautiful pools. And then he said, not sure what kind of form Avalokiteshvara transformed over here, but he said that only if you do as I command. You should listen to what I'm about to command to you. Maybe because the manifestation of Avalokiteshvara is really wonderful and beautiful, so the Rakshasas said that we will. Just tell us what would you command us. And then he taught them the Noble Eightfold Path. He made them recite the fourfold scriptures, the teachings of the Four Noble Truths. The Rakshasas said that, oh, sure, no problem. And then after hearing the teachings, some of them attained the result of becoming a once-returner, and some attained the result of becoming a non-returner. The Rakshasas were no longer afflicted by the sufferings of desire. There was no anger in their minds. They did not wish to cause anyone's death. they no longer want to harm others, because Rakshasas and Rakshasis usually had the tendency to harm the others. So they continually delight in the Dharma and took vows. They would hold vows, hold the pure vows, and start living in such purity. They promised that we shall kill no more, we will nourish ourselves in the same way that humans do in Jambudvipa, with food and drink. From now on, we will not act like Rakshasis, and we will keep the Upasika vows. Should I maybe continue a little bit more? And then, in this way, the Rakshasis took vows. Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara then left the island of Simhala and went to a place where many hundreds of thousands of different kinds of insects lived within a cesspit in a great city of Varanasi. Some said it's the Varanasi, the deer park, but in the Tibetan it is a different name. So the name is the same, but the place may not be the same. Over here, there are all kinds of maggots and all kinds of insects that live in this cesspit. And when Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara arrived there, he transformed himself into the form of a bee that made a buzzing sound that was heard by the insects as the words Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. In the 8th chapter of Resting the Mind, composed by Longchenpa, he also quoted this part. In my original translation of the adornments of a jeweled casket sutra, it is also the same. That was the title of the teaching that I translated, but the meaning is the same. So I remembered it. It talks about after the humming sound of the bee. Those sounds like humming sounds, but in their language, it is Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. The insects remember the words Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya with the great blessings of such sounds. The thunderbolt of wisdom destroyed the mountain, which has 20 peaks. That is the view of the aggregates as a self, the Sakyaditi. And they were then all reborn in the realm of Sukhavati as a bodhisattva named Shugandha Mukha.